Hello friends, welcome to jwreasoning.com. Today is Sunday, December 24th, 2023, and we're going to be considering the Watchtower study article, He Will Make You Strong, How? So let's begin in paragraph 7. It mentions here a brother in Taiwan suffers from serious health problems. In addition, he has to endure violent family opposition because of his faith in Jehovah. Well, while I do agree that a lot of times Christians will and can be persecuted because of their beliefs, but with Jehovah's Witnesses, it seems that a lot of times this persecution comes as a result of their action or reaction to others when they believe something different. A lot of times within Jehovah's Witness organization, you'll find that the persecution comes because they're taking a stand on things that may not be so important, or rather than minding their own business, they try to impose their rules on other people, rather than just allowing people to do what they do and just moving on with life. A good example of that is what took place in Russia several years ago when they had the letter writing campaign, and they sent, I guess, millions of letters to Russia to try to get them to comply or to allow Jehovah's Witnesses to be able to do what they want to do. That was bringing persecution on themselves, and it was unnecessary. They really didn't have to do that. The Watchtower has millions of Jehovah's Witnesses doing their bidding for them so that they can be able to do whatever their agenda is, rather than for the help of the people. You know, the main thing is, if we mind our own business and we go about life, and even if we preach to others, don't try to force people to believe what you believe. This is also a problem for a lot of us who come out of the organization. We feel so strongly the other way that we end up doing the same thing the witnesses are doing. So this is just a word of caution to many of you who have family, friends, relatives, spouses that are still in the organization. Lay low. Allow them to change gradually. Allow them to come to it, and don't pressure them. And I've made the same mistake. I've made the mistake of pressuring, and it isolates people. And that's what happens a lot of times within the organization. It's a little off topic, but it also goes along with this, because many times persecution that Jehovah's Witnesses receive is because of their own actions, not necessarily because of what they believe or think. It's because they're imposing it on others and making them feel bad about the things that they do, rather than allowing them to draw a conclusion for themselves. But the paragraph continues. He admits, I feel so anxious that I can't calm down enough to do my personal study. But he does not give up. First, I pray to Jehovah. That's a good idea. He says, next, I put on my earphones and listen to our kingdom songs. Now, I don't know about you, but many, especially of the new kingdom songs that they play, are depressing. And they're kind of strange. They're not melodic. They're trying to be mainstream, and they don't know how to do it. And this is what the organization is struggling with right now. They don't know how to become all things to all people. What was wrong with the old kingdom songs that they had? Some of the ones that were very pretty and very melodious, and you know, they were nice. Not all of them, but there were some that I really liked, and it seems like they've removed those things. And I've heard a number of friends talk about that, how the kingdom melodies that they play now are not the same as they used to be. They're trying hard to become mainstream without being mainstream. So to me, when this brother says, I put on my earphones and listen to our kingdom songs, if it were me, I think that would put me in a deeper depression if I were having depression and concentration issues. But that's just me. That's just my 2 cents worth. Let's move along in this Watchtower article. Paragraph 9. During a trial, do you ever feel too anxious to express yourself clearly in prayer? Or do you feel too weak to study? Remember that Jehovah understands your situation perfectly. So even when you offer a simple prayer, you can be sure that He will give you exactly what you need. If your physical or emotional pain makes it difficult for you to read and study, you might try listening to audio recordings of the Bible. Well, if it stopped there, this would be great. Yes, listen to audio recordings of the Bible. I don't recommend listening to the New World Translation, but you can go to Bible Gateway and places like this, and you can listen to the King James, the New King James, the NIV. There are many translations you can listen to. So listening to that can help. But notice what it says again. You might try listening to audio recordings of the Bible or of Bible-based publications. Now, keep in mind that when they say Bible-based publications, this means of Jehovah's Witnesses, not something else. They're not talking about looking at a Bible-based publication from another church or denomination or from any other Christian background, only Jehovah's Witnesses. And really, when I read those publications, it just makes me cringe because there are so many things that the organization turns around and everything is pushed inward. Everything is about the organization. It's really not about serving God and Christ and learning how to serve others. It's all self-serving. And again, if you're self-serving, this kind of puts you in a depression. If you're helping others, this can help bring you out of those times of trouble and depression. So you see, once again, the organization is giving advice to turn to men. Don't turn to God. It does mention the Bible there, but they're talking about listening to the New World Translation. They're talking about listening to their publications rather than being uplifted by the true Word of God. Next it says, you may also find it helpful to listen to one of our songs or to watch a video on jw.org. Really? Watching a video on jw.org, would that put you in a better state of mind when you see how robotic these people are and just, it's not sincere when I watch it. I have a hard time seeing the sincerity in some of these brothers when they speak. I'm sure that some of them are. Maybe they don't know how to express it. But by looking at jw.org, that is not necessarily, that's certainly not going to help someone like me to come out of any kind of a depression or feeling down or feeling low about things. Next it says, by praying to Jehovah and by looking for the answer in the spiritual provisions that He makes available, you invite Him to make you strong. So once again, the spiritual provisions that He makes available. We're not talking about just reading His Word, the Bible, and seeing what it says and using the avenue of prayer and by being lifted up by other people. It's all inward. The spiritual provisions come strictly from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, from the governing body, or the faithful slave, as they like to now be called. Beginning with paragraph 10, Jehovah can use our Christian brothers and sisters to strengthen us. They can be a source of great comfort when we face a trial or struggle to fulfill a difficult assignment. We especially need friends during times of distress. When we feel weak, our fellow worshipers can help us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Consider how Mary, the mother of Jesus, received strength from others. On the surface, nice paragraph. I don't disagree with what this is saying, but let's continue reading in the next paragraph. Mary needed strength. Think how overwhelmed she must have felt after receiving a weighty assignment from the angel Gabriel. She was not married, yet she was to become pregnant. She had no experience raising children of her own, but she was to care for the boy who would become the Messiah. And since she had never had sexual relations, how would Mary explain all of this to her fiancé Joseph? Paragraph 12. How did Mary receive the strength she needed to fulfill this unusual and weighty assignment? She sought help from others. For example, she asked Gabriel to provide further information concerning the assignment. Shortly thereafter, she traveled all the way to the mountainous country of Judah to visit her relative Elizabeth. That visit paid off. Elizabeth commended Mary and was inspired by Jehovah to share an encouraging prophecy about Mary's unborn son. Now let's consider this for a moment. Let's back up to paragraph 10. I've highlighted this for you. We especially need friends during times of distress. And then I highlighted, consider how Mary, the mother of Jesus, received strength from others. So during times of distress, I agree. That's why this is highlighted in green. This is a good point. We need friends during times of trouble, during times of distress. But what does the organization do to you if you come into a time of distress? Let's look at the next paragraph. Paragraph 11. Speaking of Mary, it says, she was not married, yet she was to become pregnant. The next paragraph, I'm just highlighting these spots for you. She sought help from others. She traveled all the way to the mountainous country of Judah to visit her relative Elizabeth. Elizabeth commended Mary. Now, in reading this account about Mary, we know if we read the Bible, we understand this was a miracle birth. We understand that God's Spirit was upon her, that Gabriel came to her, that this was supposed to happen. But let's fast forward this to the 21st century. And if we have a young lady in the congregation that made a mistake and she had relations with a man, which we know the account in Mary that this wasn't the case. But let's just look at this situation. We have someone who is pregnant, a young lady, and she goes to her believing relative. Is she going to get support? Likely not, unless that relative has enough balance to say, look, I'm going to set the organization aside and I'm going to help you with this. Very likely the relative, if they're a fully in witness, is not going to help a young lady who became pregnant. Now, I'm not condoning any kind of a relationship outside of wedlock, but I'm just stating the facts here. You know, we think about what's taken place here. The article here is saying he will make you strong. How? Well, they're saying because the friends are so loving and kind. Look at the loving kindness that Mary received. Of course, they believe she was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they believe that Elizabeth was one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But they had never even heard of this organization back then. But Elizabeth was treating Mary with the love and kindness that she should have. But let's continue on. Paragraph 13. Like Mary, you too can gain strength from fellow worshipers. Well, not in that situation. Like I mentioned, if there's a young person who's going through this, they're not going to receive strength from fellow worshipers. They're going to be chastised. They're likely going to be put out of the congregation, depending on how the three brothers that have her in a judicial meeting feel. If they believe she was repentant, she may stay in the congregation. But you'd better believe that she's going to be treated differently by many in the congregation because of what she's done. At the bottom of the paragraph it says, what a wonderful feeling it is to know that we are not alone. We belong to Jehovah's large family, a family that is willing to give you a hand, cry with you, and fight together with you. Again, in this situation, they would not fight together with you. They would not, what did it say? Give you a hand, cry with you. They might cry with you, but they're not going to be beside you through this process, very likely. You know, I know of a number of young sisters when I was serving as an elder who became pregnant. And during that process, the congregation really was pretty cold to them. Even though a couple of them maintained their relationship in the organization, they weren't disfellowshipped, they were treated pretty badly by a number of people. When really, this is when they need you the most. When somebody has made a mistake, a life-altering mistake, that's when people need you the most. I'd like to share a brief testimony with you. When I left Jehovah's Witnesses, I actually had visited a lot of different churches. And I became involved in one particular fellowship, and I really liked it there. I enjoyed the people. I became very good friends with a number of people there. And I remember that one of my good friends, his daughter, became pregnant at about 15 years of age. And when this happened, this fellowship takes these things very serious. They have a high standard of morality, similar to Jehovah's Witnesses, but they don't have the disfellowshipping policy like Jehovah's Witnesses do. This particular fellowship does disfellowship, but they do not shun. Disfellowship just simply means you've lost the privilege to do the things that maybe you could do in that church. Like if I were used to teach one of the schools, or if I were used to pray or to lead a Bible study, they would withhold that until such time had gone by that I could get things straightened up. But there's no shunning. But laying that aside, the father of this young lady who was my friend came to me, and we talked about this situation. So he decided to take this right to the pastor of the church, who is like the head elder. It would be like the coordinator in the Jehovah's Witness congregation. So he goes to the pastor with the young lady and the mom, and they sat down with the pastor and told him what happened. And he made this suggestion. He said, he asked her how she felt, what was she feeling, and she had terrible remorse, not just because she was caught, but because she recognized now the weight of what had happened, and that getting rid of this child, as far as its life, was not an option. And so now her life has been altered, and this is a consequence she's going to have to deal with for the rest of her life. So the pastor made this suggestion. He said, why don't you just write a letter to the church, to the fellowship? Just write a letter and write out what you're feeling, and just put your thoughts down on paper and express those thoughts to the church family. Express it to them. Tell them how you feel. And so this young lady did just that. And she expressed her thoughts. And in a nutshell, she said, I know I have made a grave mistake. I'm sorry for my actions because it was sinning against God. But also I'm going to ask that you not chastise me for the mistake I've made. I'm owning the mistake. I'm going to raise this child. I'm going to make this right. So please don't. She basically asked that they not hold this against her and treat her differently. And I'm going to tell you, that church, that fellowship warmed up to that young lady, and she is doing well to this day. This was many years ago. She's doing well to this day. She and her husband, the father of that child, are married. They have another child. They're doing very well. That girl is now a teenager herself. And you better believe that this altered her life, but I don't know that she would change a thing because of how her life has worked out. She wouldn't want to redo that sin, but she's glad that things worked the way they did because it was a great lesson for her. It helps her to be able to help others. And what a lesson that was to me, to see how this pastor dealt with that problem. It wasn't bringing her before a committee to ask her, well, how many times did you do this? Well, how do you feel about this or that? It was nothing like that. It was, look, just own it and let's move forward. And that's what happened. This is how situations like that can be handled. But within the organization, there's no room for that. You can't possibly do that. Friends, when you read these articles and you see these things, it shows you the hypocrisy of the organization. On one hand, they're saying, if you're in a situation where this young lady was pregnant, like Mary, well, look at how her family warmed up and look at how she got help. The organization is not going to do that. The friends in the organization have been trained, they've been programmed to push away, to turn their back, and to not support, because this is a terrible act. And I'm just saying, I'm not condoning what was done, but I'm saying how you deal with it can be certainly altered from the way the organization does it. There was one more point in this article, and it's in paragraph 14. It says, one way that Jehovah supplies power to us is through the elders. Well, let me say this. If the elders would handle the situation the way that pastor handled it, what a beautiful thing that would be. But you see, because there's so much control from above, and you have a book that tells you how to deal with these things, it's written by men, and you have policies that are laid in place to be able to cause division and cause people to be separated rather than help, this can never work in the organization unless there are some major policy changes. And who knows, maybe they're coming, I don't know. But this organization is taking people to destruction rather than sharing with people the love of Jesus Christ and his Father. So friends, I hope you continue to study. I hope you continue to read your Bible. Remember, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. There's no other way to salvation but by Jesus Christ. It's not through an organization. It's not from a YouTube channel like this. It's not from any group of men, but it's through Jesus. That's the only way to salvation. So please, friends, continue to study. And my prayer for you is that Jehovah will continue to bless you until we meet again.